Insurance fraud is estimated to cost the average Minnesota family about $1,400 a year in higher insurance premiums and other costs because of fraud. It is not a victimless crime. Virtually everybody in the state of Minnesota pays the price for insurance fraud. There has been a documented increase in the level of insurance fraud in Minnesota in recent years, and there's a very alarming statistic that was released just last year by the NICB that showed that Minnesota led the nation in the increase in organized criminal activity involved in insurance fraud, particularly auto insurance fraud. And those are statistics that should alarm every single Minnesotan. We should send a strong message to folks who come here, especially from out of state and even other countries, to defraud Minnesota consumers. And that message is go home, because you're stealing our money and we need to do something to stop that.
I really see a lot of shift in our criminal activity where you've got people who may have been involved in dealing drugs who are now engaged in financial fraud schemes. And we see insurance fraud being a part of that. And so whenever you have systems, for instance, like the no-fault system or whatever it is, I think that we should have our policymakers, and that's what's happening here today at the state level, they're paying attention to all of this and trying to make sure that we have the tools from a civil perspective and also from a criminal perspective to ensure that we hold accountable those offenders who commit those frauds. And again, when we're talking about financial fraud and insurance fraud, no one should ever be left with the impression that these are victimless crimes. In fact, this affects everybody.
We don't want Minnesota to be a magnet state for people that want to commit crime to come here. And what we found is there's not very many states that are like Minnesota as far as not holding people more accountable than they should, and therefore the idea is the fraud is more likely to happen here, and that's why we see people coming here.
It's all a game of greed, and it's all to fund their own personal piggy bank, because the Minnesota no-fault system here just suffers from some acute problems with severe loopholes and an opportunity for it to be exploited, and it's being exploited. Many of those loopholes are hopefully going to be closed by some of this legislation being considered here in the Minnesota Senate.